being a teenage mother, it it had its days, because it was hard, because while all my peers were doing everything they wanted to do, I was being a mama, y'all. I was changing pampers. Oh God. Hello you guys, my name is Aja and welcome to my channel. So today you guys, we are going to be discussing the sad reality of teenage pregnancy, you guys. And I'm going to take you guys on a journey into my past to talk about my lived experience with teenage pregnancy. And then I'm going to end with some advice that I have for parents that have teenage children, okay? This is something that I wish would have been taught to me when I was a teenager. So if this is something that you are interested in, please continue watching. All right, you guys, so let's get into it. So when I was 16 years old, I found out that I was pregnant. Okay, I remember this day like it was yesterday. Nobody had really taught me about a period and, how to track your days and all of that stuff. So I was already about 9 or 10 weeks when I realized that I was pregnant. So the reason that I found out is because I was just crazy sick. I was throwing up everywhere. I mean, it was crazy. And I was like, I don't know what is happening. And I talked to one of my friends about it, and she was like, girl, I think you might be pregnant. So I went to the Dollar Tree, you guys, and I bought myself a pregnancy test. And yes, it was positive. Okay. And at that moment, I was so scared. Like, I did not know what to do at all. I didn't know what to do. So I reached out to the father, and I told him, and he was basically like, yeah, no, like, you couldn't be pregnant. And we just kind of started this whole argument and everything, and it was pretty bad. So I thought about it for about another week, and I was doing some research and everything, and I knew I didn't have much time. So I called my aunt and I told her. And to my surprise, she wasn't mad at me or anything. She was just kind of like, okay, so this has happened. So what do you want to do? And we got to tell your dad. So she ended up telling my dad, and then my dad just completely was like, absolutely not. She's not having a baby. No, 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 no. Next thing I know, my dad is gonna kill me. Next thing I know, my dad is waking me up early in the morning, and he's like, let's go. And I'm like, what is going on? And he's like, let's go. So I was like, where are we going? He was like, you're going to get an abortion. And I'm like, what? Like, I don't get a choice in this, And he's like, no, you don't get a choice in this. Like, you've already been making enough choices, right? So it was a scramble trying to get me out the door, but he ended up carrying me out of that house and put me in that back seat, you guys. And the whole time we drove, it was like a 45-minute drive. The whole time I was laying in the back seat just crying. And it was just this awkward silence. Like, I don't know what was going on. And I was just thinking to myself, like, this could not be happening, but it was happening. So we pulled up to Planned Parenthood, and my dad opens the door, and he gets me out of the car. And at that moment, there are so many people outside rioting. They have all kinds of signs like pro-life, do not do this, you don't have to do it, it's your choice. And then my dad covered my eyes and we walked in that building, and he was like, Nene, we have to do this, and as a parent now, I understand, but of course then I was like, I hated him. I was so mad. I was so mad at him. He just did not understand what I was going through, and he sat down in the waiting room for me, and I went in there, and I never stopped crying. It was a very, very, very intense situation, and the nurses asked me if this was my decision, if this was what I wanted to do, and I just say yeah. So I went on with the procedure. And it was a lot. It was a lot to deal with. I basically, like, they put me to sleep, so I don't really know exactly what happened, but when I woke up, I know that I was just hysterically crying, and I was just like, wow, this happened. Okay, so we went back to the car, and then my dad said, you're going to college, like, you're not gonna have, it's not time for you to have no kids right now, you're still a kid, right? And I was like, I was so mad at him. I was so mad. But I know that he did the best thing that he felt like for me at that time. Now, do I agree with abortions? That's a whole nother conversation. But that's what happened at the time. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. So some time had went by, about 6 months had went by, actually. And me and my boyfriend at the time, we had made up and everything, and I was pregnant again, you guys, again. So at the time, I never got on birth control or anything. They really didn't even talk to me about birth control. It was a situation where, our household, we didn't really have those kind of in-depth type of conversations, and I ended up pregnant again, and this time I was like, yeah, I'm having this baby. That's just what it is. I felt like, maybe it was like something from God that was saying, okay, like, it was meant for you to be a mom, So that was the position that I took. And, my dad was devastated. Oh, he was devastated. He didn't talk to me for a long time. It caused a lot of strife within our family and everything. And it was so much going on. I ended up moving with my aunt and my uncle for a little while. But that's a different story. So what the point is that when you have a teenage child, right, of as soon as they hit puberty and things, these are the conversations that you need to be having. Okay, I know it's uncomfortable and it's cringy, and the kids like, mom, dad, no. Okay, listen, you have to have these conversations, and you cannot just assume that they know everything they need to know. Nowadays, it's a lot more access to information that's readily accessible that wasn't necessarily available back then. I didn't know about birth control and all of that stuff. Like, nobody had really set me down and said, hey, using protection and all of those were conversations that I just never had. And I believe that it had everything to do with the fact that I didn't have like a real mother figure in my life at that time. Because soon as everybody kind of found out that I was pregnant and everything, my sister's mother came to get her and took her down to that clinic and got her condoms, put her on birth control, and I'm sure had that conversation with her and everything. And that's what I needed. That is exactly the type of parenting that I needed at that time, because I had taught myself, about periods and about pads and all of that stuff, and about sex and whatnot, or what I learned from my friends or from school, but as far as like at home, we didn't have those conversations. So, I didn't really realize the consequences of my actions, until it had already happened. It was too late, So, my point is that when you have these conversations, make sure that you're open and letting your children know that, you are the person that they need to be coming to about this kind of stuff. Like, you do not want them learning about their bodies and all of the things in between from other kids or from, or from school or whatnot. You want that information to come from you, because at the end of the day, your children are a direct reflection of you, and if you haven't taught them the right way to do things, then that's just that. So I had a large consequence, for my actions, and that was that. So every year around graduation time, I get really sensitive about this because when I was graduated from high school, I was 7 months pregnant, wobbling across that stage, you guys. And I wasn't the only one that was pregnant. There was a few other girls that was pregnant too in my class, but I think I'm the only one that maybe walked across the stage. I could be wrong, but from my recollection of that, I think I was. But that wasn't my future. When I started high school, um, I had planned to go away to college and I was going to become a social worker and do some great things for our society, but the thing is like, God had other plans for me. I got accepted into Clark Atlanta, and I was leaving, and I couldn't wait to leave. But the thing is that, I made a decision and I was scared to leave at that point because I didn't know anything about being a mother. So I was scared to do it all on my own, while other kids that were 18, 17, 18 years old, that's entering their lives, and starting their journeys, going off to college, doing all of the things. I was preparing to be a mother, and I don't regret my decision. I love my son. He is my world. And the thing is that God gave him to me to help motivate me. And I tell him this all the time, he's so special to me because I know a lot of times people need things that motivate them, that give them purpose. And that's exactly what he did for me, because it wasn't just me. I had to feed him. I had to clothe him. I had to make sure that he was good, and I couldn't do that being a bum. I couldn't do that, not having a job and not working hard and not finishing school. I could not do that. So every decision that I've made, especially in my early life, had everything to do with my ability to take care of him. So I don't have no regrets. I know I had no business being sexually active so young. But it was a reason, I was looking for that validation, that love and everything. And I thought that I had found it, but boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong. Okay. Man, that's a story for another day, but because I'm not here, to bash my kid's father at all. Things have been crazy throughout the years, but being a single parent, raising my son has really taught me how to be resilient, and how to appreciate life and the gifts that God gives us. The sad reality of teenage pregnancy is there is no real way to prevent it. We can give our children all of the tools they need to be successful in life. We can teach them everything that they need to know. We can teach them about pregnancy. We can put them on birth control. We can do all of the things. We can be strict, keep them away from friends and like, don't let them spend a night nowhere. We can do all of that. But let me tell you, kids will find a way to do whatever it is that you don't want them to do, okay? Because I am lived experience with that. And no matter what we do, if it's meant to happen, it will. And that is just the sad reality of it, and all we can do as parents is just get them to the water, okay? What's the saying? You can take a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink. That is exactly what parenthood is, okay? It's a hard thing because when I was a teenager, nobody could tell me nothing, to be honest. So I don't know that even if I would have had these conversations, that things would have changed. I don't know. But I know that if somebody would have been, speaking some type of life into me, and that I felt like my life was more than that, I could have chose a different path, So it all depends on the way that you are raising your children and what you are instilling in them. And my advice to you, okay, as a parent with a teenager, okay, it's not for the weak. You need to sit them down and have these conversations, okay? Have these conversations about finances, about life, about pregnancy, about STDs, about all of the things, okay? Because at the end of the day, when they grow up and they want to make their own decisions, and they may not be good decisions, they cannot say, my mom or my dad did not teach me, okay? They cannot say that. No kid that's in this house will ever walk out of this house and say, hey, we were not informed, okay? So that's the thing that I want to leave you guys with, is have those hard conversations, because they are hard and they are uncomfortable, you know? And just because I had this experience does not mean, you know, that my kids will, you know? And I kind of live with that, thinking, you know, that my kids are going to make the same decisions that I did, you know. And as much as my dad did not want me to be a parent, you know, it was just, it chose me. You know, he wanted me to go away to college, and he knew that I had goals and that I was really smart and that, you know, I could go somewhere in life, you know, and he did not want me being a mother to stop me from being able to reach my goals, you know. So my dad loves me in that way, you know, but sometimes, you know, as a parent, it's kind of hard to articulate that to your child, especially when you see that they're not on the path that you want them to be on, you know. So that's hard. And now that I'm an adult and I'm my dad's age, well, I'm the age my dad was at the time, I understand how that was his way of loving me, of saying, hey, you're not ready, you know. And he did everything in his power to make sure that I was good, you know. But like I said, this was a gift from God, and I think that it was meant to be, because I reached all of my goals, even though I didn't go straight to college. You know, I didn't have the college life and all of that, and got my career and stuff. I didn't have that, and that's what I wanted, you know. But I made a decision, and I had to live with it. Okay, so y'all, so I made a scrapbook for my son, you know, when he was born, and I'm going to show it to you guys and let y'all know, and let y'all kind of see, you know, how it was with us growing up together. And that's exactly what happened. I was a kid, he was a kid, so he has the roughest part of me, you know, and he always tell me, you know, I'm way more lenient on the younger kids than I was on him. You know, I was quick to snap on him and to, you know, punish him, and he stayed on punishment for something. But I have a lot more patience now that I'm an older mother, and he taught me that, you know, he taught me, you know, how to parent, okay? And teenage pregnancy it's a scary, scary thing, you know, and I didn't know how I was going to make it out of it, you know, but it wasn't the end of the world, you know. It did not define me. It made me a better person, to be honest, you know. It gave me all of the tools that I need to be standing here today talking about this story, and maybe, you know, motivating, and maybe, you know, showing another parent how to open up those lines of communication with their child, okay? Because it's not easy. You know, I have those conversations with my kids, and they are grossed out, but guess what? I don't care, you know, because at the end of the day, I do not want my kids to ever be in a situation that I was in, where I just did not know. I didn't understand condoms and how they worked and how birth control worked. I didn't even understand how my period worked, you guys. So I never knew that it was an ovulation and none of that, you know. And I do remember learning a little bit about it in school, you know, but it wasn't enough to really, you know, like teach you something. It was just kind of glossed over, and then it was, you know, I was in class talking and stuff like that, so I don't even know what I retained and what I didn't, you know. But being a teenage mother, you know, it had its days, you know, because it was hard, because while all my peers were doing everything they wanted to do, I was being a mama, y'all. I was changing Pampers. Oh God. Oh, so I'm going to end here, okay? And I want you guys to gather your kids up right now, okay? And have this talk with them. Open it up. Open up those lines of communication and let them know what the real deal is. It's some nasty craziness going on in this world, and they need to know from you. about what that is. Not from the internet, not from social media, nothing, okay? They need to know from you. They need to learn from you, okay? All right, you guys. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment and let me know what you think and let me know about your experiences. I know I put a lot on you. It was a lot, I know, but there's no judgment here, you guys. I've been through it all, and I'm just slowly opening up about my life, and I feel so good about it because I don't have no regrets. I'm not ashamed at all, okay? I'm standing here strong today, you guys, and I feel like right now I'm more successful than I probably would have been had I went directly to college, okay? That's exactly how I feel. So I'm going to end here, and you have a blessed day, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Better like this, better than yours. No such thing as like this, better than yours. Think being broke was better like this, better than yours. No such thing, no such thing.